That's the state of affairs. That is the state of affairs. The fact that the guy from the ACLU can't even say, oh yeah, they did it. Mark Zuckerberg said it. We got all kinds of evidence of it. And it's so pervasive. They're even going after people, nice people like the doctor who simply put a Bible verse online.
Mr. Chairman,
I yield back.
could I introduce for unanimous consent the Supreme Court's decision, Justice Barrett's opinion?
Sounds like you're doing that right now.
If that's all right. It's Murthy versus Missouri, rebutting everything that you just said about what happened in the last administration.
Without objection. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Georgia for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Price, you would agree that a free press is a hallmark of freedom of speech, would you not?
Yes.
And you would have a problem if reporters and reporting organizations were barred from government offices and officials if they did not agree beforehand that they would allow those officials to approve their publications or their stories. You would agree that that would be against principles of free speech, correct?
In responding to the, I believe, theoretical question, I would...
Well, it's actually not even a theoretical question. It happened about a year ago, just days into this new administration. The Department of Defense kicked out news organizations that refused to agree to allow their stories to be pre-approved in order to have access to the government offices and those officials. I mean, that actually happened. And this committee has had no hearings on that, but yet it would call you over here, and you agree with me that that is an impediment towards free speech when the press does not have access to government officials. And you would agree with that, correct? Yes or no?
Well, I think it's a little bit more complicated.
Okay, well, no, it's not complicated at all. What do you think about that, Mr. Mayel? You would agree that government officials should be subject to the media, correct?
Yes, I mean, I believe in a free press as protected by the First Amendment.
Yeah, and this committee also has not had any hearings about this administration issuing a search warrant to obtain the communications devices and computers and records of a Washington Post reporter. That was something that was egregious, but this committee is silent about it. Calls you all from overseas to talk about First Amendment issues here in America, but yet is failing to look at what this current regime is doing to stifle free speech when it comes to freedom of the press, which, Mr. Price, you agree is a hallmark of freedom of speech. I mean, why is it that this committee is wasting time because of a $125 million assessment against Elon Musk by Great Britain for violating its rules? I mean, this man is worth $700 billion, and you all are over here talking about $150 million. And this committee is wasting its time trying to protect Elon Musk from $125 million when we have our First Amendment that is under attack in this country. You know, we've said nothing about it. News organizations being sued by the billionaire Donald Trump for saying something that he disagrees with. That's when your top government official is suing news organizations. Doesn't that create an impediment to the exercise of the First Amendment, Mr. Price? Yes or no?
Sir, you're very blessed you have a First Amendment. We wish we had that on our side of the
Well,
Atlantic.
shouldn't we be talking about those issues here in this committee rather than importing you all over from Great Britain to talk about what's going on in your country, when we who set the standard for the First Amendment are sitting idly by while it's burned and crushed and shattered? Isn't that ironic? Don't you find some irony in that?
I think it's, all the things you described
You know,
are ultimately under the right to appeal to
just
court.
this past weekend, 2 members of the press arrested. Don't you find that troubling, Mr. Price? In America, don't you see that our First Amendment is under attack? Our freedom of speech is under attack in this country?
And you have a court system, hopefully, that will vindicate it. We don't have that, unfortunately.
Well, you know, the court system, we have a Supreme Court that is owned lock, stock, and barrel by the billionaire president. That poses some very difficult problems for American democracy moving forward. At this 250-year mark of the Declaration of Independence from the monarchy, which I'm sure that you can appreciate.
As an Irishman, I certainly do.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
You going to have one of these every time?
well, I'm struggling to keep up with the onslaught here. This will go quickly.
All right.
Might you see Twitter kept entire database of Republican requests to censor posts. That is February 8th, 2023. Rolling Stone. Trump asked Twitter to take down derogatory tweet from Chrissy Teigen, whistleblower. Trump's censorship and control campaign threatens press freedom, FCC commissioner says. And finally, FBI raids home of Washington Post reporter in highly unusual and aggressive move. That's in The Guardian, January 14th, 2026.
Without objection. Gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you. I'm sure Mr. Raskin will cut me off exactly at 0, unlike his own people that go well beyond that. Mr. Merrill, would you agree that one of the tenets of the First Amendment, the most important part in the ACLU in its history, is the ability to seek the enforcement of it in court? Without the support of the court, the First Amendment is moot as far as its enforcement. Is that correct?
I mean, I think that accountability is a constellation of things.
No.
We are seeing
Look, I know I'm a Republican and I know you want to be evasive. The ACLU has sued, probably in federal court, more than any other entity to enforce the First Amendment in the past, including some very important things, and other constitutional. So the access to the court is how we enforce the First Amendment here in the United States, how we enforce what is right and wrong. Is that correct?
I don't want to I'm going to answer the question, but what I want to say is that the courts are one way to seek redress and a cause of action for a First Amendment violation. Accountability is more than just that.
Okay.
Accountability is
I hear your answer.
A number of different
I hear your
things.
answer, but you
So
said
it's not
I
just
hear your
a cause of
answer, but
action.
I heard nothing when we had this tirade about a man seeking to be made whole when he felt he was sued inappropriately because $125 million from the gentleman from Georgia isn't much money. I heard you, and I hear you loud and clear. You think it's okay to obstruct justice here in America, to in fact use the First Amendment as a sword instead of a scalpel. And I'll give you an example. You said that people were being forced to flee the country of their choosing, flee the country they call home. Were you talking about people who came here illegally? Yes. Were you talking about people who came here illegally and then may have gotten temporary protective status? Yes. So look, it's my time, and if I ask you a question, I'll ask you a question. The fact is, you've come here for a hearing that was about whether or not the First Amendment should have a global reach, whether somebody who says something in America who's a citizen of another country can be arrested in a third country because they don't like what was said in America. And instead of being here to testify for that, when the chairman asks you a question, you go dumb. Shame on the ACLU. You didn't protect the First Amendment under the last 4 years, and now you come here with the hypocrisy of all time to pretend that the ACLU hasn't become an arm of the Democratic Party. It hasn't become.
No administration has gotten a free pass from the ACLU.
Yeah, well, the last
Not a
one got a
single
hell of a
administration.
free pass. So I'm going to ask the other folks a question, which is a question. I'm the vice chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee, and although this is Judiciary Committee, clearly the question of whether we can work together to enforce it is important. For each of the witnesses who came here to answer questions related to the hearing, if the United States uses its global reach, power, and influence to enforce that when the First Amendment occurs, when speech occurs in the United States, that you are at that point an American person for purposes of protection under the First Amendment, if we begin a process of